What's something you did when you were younger that haunts you to this day? I was homeschooled when I was younger and didn't really interact with kids my age until I started public high school in 9th grade. I desperately wanted to fit in and be seen as funny and cool. So when I noticed that yo mama jokes seemed to get people laughing, I sprung on the opportunity to roast someone's mother and solidify myself as an edgy comedy genius. One day, armed with an arsenal of yo mama jokes I had looked up online the night before, I smugly turned to my brand new friend John and said, "Yo mama so old." I told her to act her age and she died. Instantly, the group fell silent, and John looked intensely uncomfortable. But then his face lit up and he put his arm around me and said that was a good one. Cogdis88. With a genuinely kind smile on his face. It was only later that day that someone pulled me aside and explained that John's mom had passed away from ovarian cancer a month earlier, and that it's hard for him to think about or talk about her death. I was mortified, and the fact that John responded with sincere kindness instead of publicly calling me out made me feel even worse. John was an awesome guy, and I still wish there was some not weird way to go back and apologize to him about that. Edit. Wow. This got a lot more attention than I thought it would. Thank you so much for all of your responses and similar stories. I actually just realized I have John's number saved in my phone from ages ago, so I'll shoot him a text later. At church camp one year, I really had to go poop. I rushed back to our bunkhouse and ran to the bathroom. As I'm pulling my pants down, I feel the poo come shooting out and realize I missed the toilet. I hit the lid and directly to the side. I was so terrified that someone would find me in there and be ridiculed for life that I bolted without cleaning it up or anything. I was wearing my favorite hat that I had been wearing all of camp, which was a Mighty Ducks hat from the cartoon, not the live action movies. That hat apparently fell into the pooey mess and I didn't realize it in my terror. A little bit later, the whole group came to the bunks and found the mess. It caused a massive uproar, as you can imagine, with 40 plus 10-year-olds. Then, someone discovers my hat in the aftermath. To this day I'm still shocked that the connection wasn't made by the kids. I played it off as total shock that someone would take my hat and poop on it or throw it in the mess. From my memory, all the kids bought the lie. They were also under the impression someone sabotaged my favorite hat and got away with it. I verified this story recently with one of my childhood best friends that was there. He had no idea it was me who did that. We had a pretty good laugh about it, but that moment haunted me for years. At a very young age, I announced at a family picnic that my dad had the biggest D I'd ever seen. I don't think I had ever seen an erection before, TBH. It wasn't abuse, I just walked in on him changing. As a young lady, maybe 6, I tried to pee like a boy, unsuccessfully, and pissed all over the floor. Left the pee, and blamed it on the cat. My mom knew it was me. I'm 21 now. Still haven't lived it down. My mom went out briefly, so I shut myself in my bedroom, took off all my clothes and started dancing crazily in front of the mirror. Think Groucho Marx in the mirror scene. Quick step, straight arms flailing out in jubilation. But, you know, naked. I'm not sure why. I was 11 and I believe I had my reasons at the time. It all went fine, and I heard the front door signaling my mum's return, so I stopped and redressed and started doing normal stuff again, albeit with somewhat flushed cheeks from my exertions. That was when she came up to my room to gently tell me I was clearly visible from the road. My full-length mirror was right next to the window, and my room was at the front of the house. In my early teens I used to jerk it on the bed all the time. My bed had a loose board on the headboard that would kind of make this clacking sound to my stroking. As a naive child, I assumed nobody could hear it. Turns out everybody, my older sisters, my mom, dad, and even my aunt who stayed with us a lot, heard me jerking off all the time and knew exactly what was going on. I learned this about 4 years after moving out, when we all got together and got drunk one night. And on my way up to the bedroom my drunk ass mom goes, "We don't want to hear that headboard clanking tonight or you're going to be washing those sheets." Everyone laughed. I was like, what? And then thought about it all night. Nobody acknowledged it at breakfast. Good god, that was awful. Me and my friend Dylan Ding Dong ditched this old lady, except that we didn't ditch. We just stood there, and then when she answered the door, I threw a dead bird at her. I was in elementary school and my father completely shaved off his beard and mustache one night. When he came in to wake up my sister and me to get ready for school, I didn't recognize him at all. My solution to having a stranger in my room was to quietly go into my closet and shut the door. They still laugh about that one. But come on, who makes such a drastic change overnight and doesn't tell their kids? I've always been really self-conscious and shy. Back in grade school it was my turn for show and tell. I didn't think I was good enough to show anything. So I of course asked my mom what I should do. I'd been playing with a toy harmonica a lot. My favorite thing to do was play guess the song with mom, so I could tell if I was improving. She suggested I bring in my harmonica and play guess the song for the class. I'm actually good at this, I'll do it. So I get to class and I say we're going to play a game. I will play a song on my harmonica. You guys tell me what song it is. Kids were so hype, you guys. Visions of friends and acceptance danced in my head. I walked to the middle of the circle so excited. I was going to crush. Okay, here we go. I blew into the thing like my life depended on it. I ducking John Poppered it, you guys. I must have gone 45 seconds before the teacher waved me off and said great job. Nobody could guess the song. But, Old MacDonald? Come on, I can do another one. Nothing. The teacher said my turn was up. There would be no second song. I walked back to my seat so humiliated. Turns out my mom had learned to guess Old MacDonald. Because that's what I always said I'd been playing. I guess she wanted to encourage me. Why she sent me into class not knowing how to duck and play harmonica is another question. I cringe to this day. I am not sure my social life recovered until college. I wanted to be a cat. So when I was 4 my mom put my food and water in bowls on the floor for a day or two. She had to put an end to it when she caught me taking it in the cat's litter box. She still brings it up after a glass or two of wine. I ditched my best friend in 5th grade when she started acting weird and withdrawn. And since I was the queen bee in a very small private school, she was ruthlessly mocked and ostracized. Years later, I learned her behavior had been triggered by the fact that her father was raping her. I've never forgiven myself. My brother and I had the talk when I was in 1st grade. He was older than me and tells me everything, so it had to happen to both of us. My dad was explaining it in probably more detail than a 1st grader should get, and I asked, can we practice with our butts? And he freaked out, ha ha ha. Then he explained it as you find a mommy and you have a baby with a mommy. I went downstairs and cried to my mom saying I couldn't do that to her. I cringe so much. And my family brings it up so much. There was a solid 2 years where I never ran without putting my arms behind my back like they do in Naruto. Our dog had puppies when I was like 3 or 4 and I would play with them quite a bit. I apparently took one outside and wanted to play in the leaves with it and ended up breaking its neck. I didn't understand what was wrong with it, so I just put it back with the mom. My dad woke me up that night when he got home and he had the puppy. Basically I got a lecture about how I had hurt the puppy, and because of what I did, we were going to have to kill the puppy. It was completely paralyzed, and that was my fault. Ducked me up for a while. I even dug him up about a week later so I could pet him and say I was sorry. My mom found me and freaked out. Imagine being a nurse and coming across your kid petting a week-old dead dog in the ground. Hoo boy. Here we go. Alright. So when I was about 11, I was diagnosed with celiac. That meant I couldn't, and still can't, eat anything with gluten in it. With that said, it made eating out anywhere besides my house and a select few places kind of awkward. Especially because I was a picky little kid to start with. About a month or 2 into my new diet, I was invited to a friend's house for his birthday party. When I got there, I found out they had talked with my dad and made me a gluten-free pot of mac and cheese. That would have been great except for the fact that 11-year-old me hated mac and cheese. I remember trying to fake eating some while my friend's mom was watching, but I eventually just gave up and avoided the plate and her entirely. I essentially left an entire pot of mac and cheese made specifically for me alone. And just in case somebody isn't aware, gluten-free substitutes aren't cheap. The moment that still sticks with me nearly 10 years later is his mom looking at the pot and going, what am I going to do with all this? Still makes me cringe at night thinking about it. I was at this like women's health fair at a museum when I was 12 and I was walking to all the booth and picking up the free things. They had like toothbrushes, stickers, cheap necklaces, candy, etc. At one booth I picked up what I thought must have been a foil packet of sample lotion or something. I didn't think much of it. The woman running the booth sees me and gently asks how old I am and I tell her. Clearly trying to embarrass me, she says she doesn't think I need those. I ask why not and she tells me they are condoms. I stare at the packet in my hand horrified, throw it on the table, and literally bolt. Everything on my MySpace when it first came out. I was the edgiest edgelord in all edgelordium. My parents took me and a friend of mine to a flea market. My friend and I were browsing a stand and I saw a really nice quill that I wanted to buy with my pocket money. I asked the dude how much it was and I thought he answered something like, "You can't afford that." I said okay, then keep it and walked away. My friend asked me why I did that and was confused. I asked her what she meant and she explained that he said I could just have it for free. I don't know how I could misunderstand that, but I felt so bad about my reaction in the new context, and still do. I once said to my mom's boss as a kid, "So you're the one my mom has to suck up to." I thought I was being funny. I was not. My grandma had a very nice set of tiny teacups. They were extremely little, even hard to grab for my 3-4-year-old fingers. While everybody in the house was napping on a lovely Sunday afternoon, I decided it would be a good idea to pee in the teacups. I went to the bathroom, peed in all of them, stayed there playing with the teacups. Then I emptied them but didn't wash them or clean them and put them back into its place. I think of my life in terms of before leaving hometown and after leaving hometown at 13. Before leaving my hometown, I had a crush on any girl that would give me the time of day. I cried over it. I'd write cryptic and, in hindsight, creepy secret admirer notes and sneak them into my current crush's desk. I remember having a moment of clarity one day and tried to steal a note back before the girl could read it, but another friend stopped me and said I couldn't just go through a girl's bag because of, and she whispered it, pads. So she ended up finding the note and getting understandably creeped out. When I moved away from my hometown, I found a good solid circle of friends and stopped having crushes on everyone. I think it really came down to me not having that many real friends or knowing how to be friends with the opposite sex. But man, those notes. I really hope my childhood friends and crushes have long forgotten about me. Brought my 6th day present to school to show it off. Was a geode with a wizard and tower on it. So in my excitement I forgot my lunch, and come lunchtime I was starving and ended up trading my gift for a tuna sandwich. Regretted it to this day that I gave away a gift when I could have just waited a few hours to eat. When I was in high school, in one of my classes towards the end of the year, we had a little potluck of sorts, where kids could bring baked goods or whatever and chit chat and relax after finals week. One girl had brought a tray of cookies with dips in the middle. In the middle sat what were probably dollops of chocolate ganache. They looked real good. So good, in fact, that I turned to my friend to make some crazy hyperbolic statement about them to make him laugh. Being a genius, I went with, "Those look disgustingly good," whatever that was supposed to mean. Also being a genius, I hadn't noticed that the girl who baked them was standing on my other side. When I turned to look at her, it was obvious all she had heard was me emphasizing the word disgusting. She looked devastated. I tried my best to explain what I had actually said, but since the truth sounded exactly like a lame attempt at a lie, I just had to accept my cookie in shame. It was something like 15 years ago, and it still haunts me to this day. If you're reading this, I swear the cookies actually looked really good. In 7th grade, I didn't understand the assignment of an English class. We had to pick an Olympic sport and do a report on it. In the instructions, we were told to choose a song or poem that related to the sport or write one of our own. I picked none because I had bobsledding. Day of presentations and I have my little boombox with the CD in it and I start playing it. The teacher stops me halfway through and says if we picked a song, we had to sing with it. So I had to sing with it and I cried because I was embarrassed and nervous and everything. This was literally 16 years ago and some people will send me snaps of a jukebox playing the song and ask if I remember. When I was in 4th grade, I made it to the final round of my school's geography B and had the chance to beat one of the 5th graders, also thereby proving that I was the smartest kid in my elementary school. The question I received was, "What is the capital of Washington?" Of course, I confidently yelled, "Seattle," and then immediately after realized my mistake. I'm still haunted by that missed opportunity. For further clarification, I've never lived in Washington state, but grew up in a neighboring state, so I felt like I should have known the answer because of proximity. My shame was magnified by the fact that this happened in the spring of 2001, just a couple of months after an earthquake had cracked the dome of the Capitol building in Olympia. Plus, I was the kind of kid who cared about geography B, so I had tried to memorize all the state capitals. I knew the right answer, but I cracked under the pressure. How mean I was to a little cousin of mine. Her eldest sister and I are the same age, and we'd not want to play with the baby when we were 7 and she was 4, and there would be no other adults in the house for hours because her mother was off doing whatever or drinking off a hangover. I'd let her sister basically lock her in her room or the bathroom and just forget about her. I haven't spoken to her in 5 years, and all I know is she assumes I'm the same kind of ithead as the rest of our family is, so I'm hesitant to contact her and really don't even know how. Ugh. When I was 10, I asked for a GBA for my birthday. My mistake was that in my haste I hadn't mentioned what game I wanted to play on it. My dad ended up getting me some arcade shooter for it, and I told him that I didn't want like it. When I told him, he responded with, "Oh, it looked really good to me," in one of the most hurt tones I have ever heard him use. I know he probably doesn't remember it, but every time I think about it, which is often, I feel like garbage. Just typing this makes me want to cry. It's the one thing I wish I could go back and change if given the chance. I know it probably doesn't seem that bad to everyone else, but my dad is one of the toughest sobs I know, so knowing that I hurt his feelings hurts me a lot. All the stuff I broke being young and stupid. My grandpa gave me this cool old straight razor when I was 14 or 15. I marveled at how sharp it was and thought I would go test it out. I took it up in the woods and started cutting twigs or something with it and broke a big chunk out of the blade, completely ruining it. So dumb. Here's a seriously ducked up one. When I was in middle school, my older sister liked to collect dead animals and put them in hydrogen peroxide to keep the skeletons. One day she had a high school lab where they dissected cats, like fully grown adult cats. Well, my sister apparently really wanted a cat skull to put in her room because she asked for my help without telling me what I was doing. I'm still haunted often by the memory of my sister handing me a pair of scissors and telling me to cut the head off of one of the bodies only to mess it up and have to do it again. Now whenever I pet one of our cats, I very often have the urge to throw up because I'm reminded of how it felt to cut through a spine with a pair of cheap scissors. I was walking down a beach with my mom and picked up a tampon and called her over and told her I found a water dropper. She yelled in terror for me to put it down, but it was too late. My family now refers to that beach as Tampon Beach. When I was around 3 years old, I was staying at my grandma's house and she had a friend over. She is a social butterfly and was talking to her friend for hours on end, aka an eternity for a 3-year-old. And I eventually got really antsy and wanted her to pay attention to play with me. When I decided I had had enough, she was standing in the kitchen still talking. I came up behind her and bit her on the butt cheek. I think she had a red teeth mark for weeks. 25 years later, my grandma is now 93 years old and this story still comes up at every Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner. Neosus copyright airing. When I was maybe 3 or 4 years old, I used to find pieces of shingle from the back of the house in the backyard. I figured out if I rubbed them on rocks they would write like chalk. I would crouch down and write on the rocks, sometimes just grinding it down to a powder, with my face inches away. When I got older, I found out they were made of asbestos. I now have some scarring in my lungs that is generally attributed to asbestos exposure. I was out grocery shopping with my mom. She went to put the cart back and I went to the car, but I accidentally got in another car that was identical to ours and I was confused as to why there were 2 strangers in our car. It was super embarrassing. I once stole a kid's juice box when he wasn't looking, and as I took it, the fire alarm went off. Friend was talking to one of their friends I didn't know. That person waved to someone behind us and I gave them a high five. I get embarrassed just thinking about it. Every so often I remember the gay jokes that would tell to my friend. Nothing hateful. Just regular dumb teenager stuff like haha that's so gay or you're being so gay right now etc. etc. At the end of high school my friend came out to me as gay. I remember he said he was nervous about telling me because he thought I might be a little homophobic. I would pretend to have seizures in public. I was 12-13 at the time and thought it was hilarious. So did my friends. No one else did. And certainly, no one thought it was real either. I just looked like an idiot. Saying loudly in the direction of dog, "Wow, that is an ugly dog," while trying to impress friends with my edginess. Only not to see the old lady behind the dog, to whom it must have been a heartbreaking thing to hear. Damn it. Not my story, but this was my closest friend from high school. So, we were juniors in high school, and the little brother of one of our classmates hung himself one day. Our classmate was actually the one who walked in and found him. She still went to school as a crying, upset mess. Understandably, she was in the same first period class as my friend, who had no idea anything happened, and some of her friends were consoling her in the corner of the room. My friend then walks in, feels the tension in the room, and jokingly says, "Who died?" The room looked to him in horror, and the crying girl proceeded to burst out crying again. Me and my buddy pushed a dozen eggs and about 10 tomatoes through a neighbor's letterbox. Turned out they had just gone on vacation for almost a month and they returned to an ungodly smell right behind the front door. Somehow they found out it was us and I got in big trouble. When I was like 6, I used to hit on teenage girls. I haven't flirted with anyone in 13 years. I tormented my younger brother, like, severely. I used to put him in armbars until he begged me to stop. I used to turn his friends against him. Worse yet, when he went to the same school as me, I would find him between classes and humiliate him. Our parents hated each other and split when we were young and basically fought over who didn't have to have custody. I was an angry kid and he was very passive, and he was my easiest outlet. I've never actually apologized to him for all of it. I don't know if he even remembers much, but I think about it often and now I do whatever I can for him when he needs help. I hope someday I'll have the guts to tell him how I feel. I wore a troll face shirt when I was 13. I had this cat when I was a kid. I heard that cats always land on their feet, so I dropped her from the second floor in my house to test it out. She landed on her side but did not seem injured. We later found out she was pregnant, and when she finally had her kittens, all but 2 of them were dead. I don't know if me dropping her was the reason, but I'm pretty sure it was. I still feel awful about it to this day. I used to pretend to be a bird. I would act like a parakeet in public for no reason. I looked ridiculous. I was really boy crazy, and it was at its all-time height when I was in middle school. So all the weird, creepy stalking is pretty cringy to think about. Like making sure I just so happened to walk by doors as they got out of class or by the lockers. But thinking back on the phone calls, because my friends were just as bad, so we all had way too much support from each other to call these guys from whoever's house we were at landline. Sometimes there were prank calls. Sometimes we'd try and talk to them. Sometimes we got yelled at by parents on the other end. Ugh. I was 16, girl, and my mom was picking me up for school. I always changed for sports practice in the car, so one day I got into the car, was in a rush, and had pulled off my shirt and was taking off my bra when I saw I was in the wrong car and my guy friend's dad was staring with his mouth open in the driver's seat. I was so mortified I ran out of the car clutching my shirt to my chest and ran into the right car while my mom laughed hysterically. I stole $2 from my dad's wallet when I was 10 years old just so I have more pocket money for school that day. His wallet had only $6. I later realized my dad was not doing well financially at the point of time and was struggling to get by. Wind was blowing hard. It was raining. Hundreds of seagulls relaxing on an island about 60 yards away. Had a nice smooth rock in my hand. I was gonna just throw it at the flock to piss them off, but there was this one seagull all by himself 20 yards to the right. So I played the wind and threw a Hail Mary at this dude and hit him right in the face. Dead instantly. I started running because all his bros saw what happened and started flying towards me. I swear the ghost of that seagull, it's on my truck every ducking day. When I was around 6 or so, my dad shaved his beard for the first time. He has a brother, and his brother is skinnier than my dad. My dad's not a huge guy, just a little bigger than his brother. Anyways, she shaved. I saw his face and laughed at him saying you're like a fat uncle. He was laughing along. But now that I look back to it, it was hurting his feelings.